Daniela does adult content. She has a bachelor's, master's, and is now working on a PhD. I'm very excited to be chatting with you today. So, how are you, Danielle?
I'm doing great, and I just wanted to say thank you for having me. I know we've been following each other on Instagram for a little bit and connected through Instagram, so I really appreciate the work that you do as well on the topic of like disability and sexuality. So I'm glad that we can connect today and talk about some fun stuff, I hope.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that um, we can agree on a lot of things in terms of disability and sexuality, and just being able to express yourself in a way that is a lot of times frowned upon, especially within the disability community, because we are often desexualized.
Right, right. No,
Mhm.
100% agree on that point for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So, the first question that I wanted to ask is,
Mhm.
just tell us a little bit about yourself. Any diagnoses that you're comfortable sharing,
Mhm.
about your social media platform and presence, and anything else that you feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah, sure. Well, as you said, my name is Daniela, and my degree specifically are music theory. So I've kind of been like an arts kid my entire life. I grew up around the arts, have always appreciated all the arts, even other than music. So that's been a really big part of my life, which I feel like ties into the content creation because I've always loved art. I've always loved, photography and just like the aesthetics of things, lighting, angles, like all that fun stuff. So doing the content creation kind of helps me to be able to tap into that part of my creativity, which I really enjoy. But yeah, I started the content creation as, I mean, originally it was just kind of, I mean, for fun, just part of my own like personal journey with becoming like more comfortable with my sexuality and all that stuff. And as I began dating, and yeah, it's been about 3 years now, and now it has become not just something that I do for fun, but also kind of a side hustle. So that part is nice. It's kind of been beneficial for me in that way as well. Um, but yeah, I mean, other than, just it being kind of like a hobby or for fun and also kind of a stream of income as well. It's also been a place for me to, feel like I'm doing something beneficial for the disability community. As you mentioned, I feel like, within society that yes, disabled people are often very, desexualized or considered like asexual most of the time, which obviously, we know is completely false and a misconception about the disability community, especially those that have visible disabilities. So I feel like through my, social media platforms and then the content that I produce for like Playboy and OnlyFans, that I'm able to kind of help push against and dispel some of those misconceptions. So it's also been, a place where I have found like a bit of purpose in a different way than I had previously. So not just like benefiting the disability community in the way that I feel like a comment I get a lot is, like, thank you for kind of being a point of representation in this area, or just inspiring, other disabled people to kind of feel a little bit more confident in themselves and explore their sexuality. So I feel like it's beneficial in that way, but then also beneficial in the way that, I'm kind of speaking to like the able-bodied sometimes, being like, like you don't quite have this right. And you are kind of actually missing out on some opportunities to connect with some really cool people if you are automatically kind of discounting them as options, like in your own like romantic and dating or even like friendship journeys and things like that. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm coming from and a little bit about me. But yeah, it's been like a very fun and like what kind of relatively new journey for me because previously I've kind of very much been in the world of academia. So this was like a whole new world initially when I started.
Yeah, I mean, I think like this is a huge reason why I admire your work that you do. I think that part of um society desexualizing us is the idea that we are not desirable and that we do not have much to offer in relationships. And
Right.
I think like part of the work that both of us do is trying to, like you said, dispel that myth.
Mhm.
It's going to take a lot of work, I think, but
Right.
hopefully in our lifetime we will see that change.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that it's hard to kind of think about the future now, especially with like everything that's going on politically, because we are kind of living in a time currently where, anybody that has a body that sits outside of, a certain standard, right? Um, is, you know, being oppressed in various ways. Um, and which affects like a lot of the social aspect that we're talking about how disabled people are viewed. So I still have hope for sure. But I think now especially is like a very important time to like humanize not only disabled people, but really like anybody that, is a quote unquote different body. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, definitely agree that there's a lot of work to be done. I do have hope, even in the current times, that we're still progressing slowly towards that goal of just seeing disabled people as humans and the normal people that we are. But yeah, we're doing the good work, I feel like. So
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Um, so I guess I was gonna ask you what inspired you to focus on
mhm,
confidence as a disabled person in your social media platform, but
yeah.
I feel like we kind of already touched on that. So I guess I'm wondering, like, in your everyday life, do you consider yourself to be a confident person?
Um, I would say in certain respects, yes. Um, I, I know that, I'm a very educated person, that I'm a very competent person. A lot of things that I've set as a goal or put my mind to, like I've been able to accomplish, I've always done like really great in school and, that was just kind of always my thing. Um, with all that being said, though, I feel like there's this kind of like disconnect in the experience that we have, especially like going through like when you're starting to kind of explore your body and explore like dating and romance and all that stuff, that our experience as disabled people is quite different from able-bodied people, especially as you're thinking about like through like puberty and adolescence and young adulthood and all that stuff. So I think that in terms of like my looks and like my confidence as far as like connecting with people in a romantic way and just dating in general and all that stuff, that it did take me a lot longer to kind of catch up in the confidence area than it did for a lot of my like when I think about like my peers, growing up around my same age. Um, it had a lot to do with there were kind of a lot of things that started happening at once. I think that for one, I ended up moving to New York City in order to pursue my PhD. So it was kind of like a like fresh start, so to say, in like a huge like bustling city, with all these
Mhm.
options I had in front of me in like every way that you could imagine. Um, and just kind of that in combination with, kind of reaching a point where like I felt like I had a lot to offer as a person, like not just as a friend, but like as a romantic partner, and I just hadn't really been able to explore that part of myself very deeply at that point. So once I moved to New York, it was kind of, I just kind of made a decision. I was like, I'm just going to start putting myself out there, doing the whole like dating out thing, going on dates, meeting people. And honestly, like just making the decision to do that and then doing it, like putting myself in the situation of like, I am literally meeting this person for dinner right now that I've never spoken to before, and just like, I'm just trying to be like confident and remind myself of the things that I had to offer as a romantic partner. I do feel like the confidence in myself, like physically and sexually, kind of caught up to me. Like the more I kind of had experiences with dating and interacting um, with men, since I'm heterosexual, unfortunately. But,
I say the same thing.
so yeah, so men because I'm heterosexual, but yeah, so it's like, yes, I would generally describe myself as a confident person, and through dating and putting myself out there, and definitely like this content creation journey that I've been on, I think has all really helped to increase my confidence as far as like confidence in myself as like a sexual being and a romantic partner and all that stuff. But I always say that like as far as I have come, like I mean, now I'm in my early 30s, so I would say like really this journey of like sexual self-confidence really started around the age of like 25 for me when I like I said when I moved to New York. As much as I have grown in that area, I'm not like, yeah, like I'm just so confident and I just think that I'm like the most beautifulest thing that has ever, it's not really like that. It's just it's definitely like a constant battle. Like I still 100% have my insecurities about my body, especially, like I said, anytime you're in a different body that kind of sits outside of the like Eurocentric, you know, able-bodied standard, right? That it can be a point of insecurity, especially with all the messaging that we receive about our bodies being abnormal or different, like from such a young age. So, I mean, just like anybody else, I mean, I have like areas of my body where like I know my angles and like how to hide certain parts. And I mean, I feel like that's something that we all do. Like we all have one side of our face that we like more. So I mean, it's definitely still like a work in progress. I definitely have my some days where like I'm not feeling it. I don't feel cute. I don't feel super desirable. But yeah, little by little, I try to get over some of that stuff. And but I think with anything else, it's just going to be something that I'll probably be working through my entire life. As disabled people, it's just something that like the internalized ableism is something that's so like instilled within us from such a young age. That yes, I definitely have insecurities surrounding like certain areas of my body or like how I move because I have like limited muscle strength and just stuff like that. That I'm probably will be working through like forever, honestly. So I do like to talk about that because I feel like sometimes um, I'll especially have like disabled peers that are kind of like, oh, like I wish that I could like feel that confident and like do what you're doing or like feel how you feel. And it's like, yes, I've grown a lot, but I'm not like I'm not like the poster child of confidence. I don't feel like in that department.
Yeah,
So
I
I try to
think
make that clear.
yeah. I think like in both of our platforms, we kind of like we are speaking to both ourselves and the people around us
Yes.
about how it looks to be confident.
Yes.
And then there's that aspect of like social media doesn't show the parts of us where we're not
Right.
feeling ourselves. And
Right.
I think the fact that we are women and disabled,
Right.
that's like those two things together kind of make it really challenging to
Oh,
always
100%.
be
Yeah.
confident. And honestly, I think no matter who you are, I don't think anybody's always confident. I
Right.
think, like you said, you're a work in progress, and so am I. And I think a lot of people are, if
Right.
not everybody.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
yeah. So, I think, uh, what we are doing is obviously trying to change the narrative and uh, I guess show people a specific thing, which is that disabled people can be desirable, we can be sexual beings, we are allowed to feel confident in our bodies, even though we don't look like the average person.
Right.
But I'm
100%.
sure that a lot of that, like it does for me, comes with the whole like internet trolls and
Hmm.
like people harassing you and all of that. Like,
Right.
do you ever encounter that?
I definitely have. I I feel like the times that I can like specifically remember that we kind of had a more of like a lasting impression is like, and you kind of touched on this a little bit when you mentioned like kind of this intersectionality between like disability and also being a woman, right? Um, and which is that sometimes the trolls are like, I'll be a target of harassment because they have felt like rejected.
Mhm.
So like them seeing like my business Instagram or like hitting me up on one of my platforms like Playboy or OnlyFans with like they're treating it like a dating app or something and just being like, you know, thank you, but I'm not looking to meet with you in person, talk with you, nothing in person. If you want to interact with me, basically like as far as my content, like I'm offering like a service. And I feel like that's when I have been kind of hit with a mix of like ableist and misogynist comments, basically. I feel like that's usually like when the troll behavior will sort of come out. I will say I have felt very lucky in that I have not received like maybe I just haven't hit that side of the algorithm yet of like the pools of people in which I would likely receive that type of harassment from. I feel like it will probably happen one day. So for as of now, it's been more of like a select few versus like a very common occurrence. But I also just feel like it's because currently like I'm not like a huge online presence or anything like that. So I anticipate that it's coming if I continue to grow in the way that I hope. But as of now, it's been more of some select experiences, and usually it's because it's like men that have or maybe their egos got a little knocked down because they tried to, you know, they wanted to connect with me on a personal level, and that's not what I'm offering. Like, so I felt like there was with the mix of like feeling rejected, and that was when some of the harassment behavior started to come out, which is an unfortunate. It's not just me. I think that's something that all women kind of encounter.
Mhm. And
Everybody's
I think,
nice until they feel rejected.
yeah, exactly. And I
Hmm.
think that there's this idea that we as disabled people are easy targets and that we
Right.
cannot defend ourselves, and
Right.
that is far from true.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think it definitely also has to do with like, oh, you should be like grateful that I'm interested in you. And I'm kind of like, buddy, like, have you looked at me? Like, what, what about what you've seen or heard about me makes it seem like I'm desperate for your attention specifically, or that I'm hurting in that department. So, I think that that is also part of the misconception of like, oh, well, like, she's disabled. She should just be like grateful that like anybody wants to date her or that like I'm interested in her or showing her flattery or attention or whatever. And there's this like cute, I feel like I've seen it floating around a lot amongst like disabled women online, but it's like the phrase like I'm disabled, not ugly. And so yeah, I think that's where some of that is coming from, the ableism part of it. Just like, oh well, like you should be grateful for the attention type of thing. And then when I reject that attention, it's kind of like, oh, like how dare you type of thing. Entitlement, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Hmm. Um, so on the days that you don't feel as confident,
Hmm.
what typically helps you to get into that confidence?
Yeah, honestly, sometimes it's a lot of little things, I feel like when I'm just at home, like I'm not really somebody that likes a lot of clothes, as maybe my Instagram suggests. Um, so when I'm at home, I just like, cute, comfy things. Sometimes it's literally just like a little shirt or like a little house dress or something. And even though I'm just at home and, you know, there may or may not be other people seeing me that day, um, that I just whenever I am buying things or shopping for things, I try to get things where I'm like this is cute. It's something I can throw on really quickly, especially as a disabled person. That's really important to have things that are like cute and comfy that are easy to put on. So I feel like just like throwing on like a top or like a little dress or something, even if I'm just at home, that I know is like that I consider to be like flattering on myself. So like even today, like I know you can't really see me, but like I'm wearing a just like a little cami shirt, but I'm like, you know what, like the tatas are doing something. Like it looks kind of cute, just like simple stuff like that. Or just like throwing on like a little bit of makeup. Like I love like a little sparkle or something. It makes me feel
Yeah.
feminine and girly and I feel like those are little things that kind of help me feel a little more confident even when I'm just at home and like maybe not feeling super cute. Um, so it's stuff like that. I think I phrased it to somebody once, in terms of like how I'll pick like my little house outfits or something is like, putting on something where like if you wanted to send like a selfie to your crush, that like you would feel cute enough, that you would feel comfortable doing that sort of thing.
Mhm.
That's kind of how I think of it. But yeah, it's just little things that make me feel good. And like for me, like I really enjoy like kind of being like very feminine and girly. That's something that I enjoy that makes me feel more confident. So anything that kind of helps me to tap into that helps me to feel a little bit more confident, even if I'm not feeling particularly cute or confident that day.
Mhm. Yeah, and something that came to mind is that, um, like, accessible clothing is so
Mhm.
important, and I'm loving that a lot of brands are, um, kind of working towards that, especially
Right.
with bras, um,
Yes. Hmm.
because it's the idea that people who need a little more assistance with getting dressed, they deserve to wear things that make them feel cute
Oh
too.
yeah. 100%. Yeah. I feel like whether it's for personal use or like for the content creation, that's like one of the main things that I look for now is like, yes, like even for like lingerie or something, like I want it to be like sexy and like emphasize the right parts and all of that stuff. Um, but like I don't want it to be like some crazy thing with like a bunch of straps. Like I mean I have done that, but it's not fun. It takes up a lot of time and energy. So now I'm just more of like what is still cute and is the look that I'm going for, but that like will be fairly accessible for me. Like, it's not going to be super difficult to put on. Another one thing I'll mention that I really love that also helps me feel a little bit more confident when I put it on is things like baby dolls, like baby doll lingerie. It's just basically like a dress, but I feel
Mhm.
like usually they're kind of like mesh or see-through or whatever. with like spaghetti straps and makes the tatas look nice and stuff. But yeah, it's very breezy, super easy to put on. Stuff like that. Yeah, I definitely look for that a lot, whether it's just like for personal or for content stuff. I want it to be fairly accessible for me to make it easy to put on, fast. Nothing too
Mhm.
difficult.
Yeah. Um, that's really encouraging for people who kind of feel that uh clothing that makes them feel good is kind of too out of reach because of accessibility reasons.
Right, right,
So it's good to know that there are things that, even if they're not specifically geared towards disabled people, there
right.
are things that you can find that will be easy to put on.
Yeah, like I definitely like you mentioned bras, like I really do not like traditional bras. Like especially like anything that's like a little bit more um how would you say, like retains its shape. So like maybe it's like a little bit thicker material. It's less like body conforming and more of like your body is supposed to fit the item. So like I don't like underwire bras for that reason, or really any traditional like regular bra you can think of. Like I typically don't like it, but I love things like little sports bras or little bralettes. Like I love bralettes because they're very comfy. It's like a soft material that is more like will conform to your body, that is also still really cute and fairly accessible. Um, but yeah, I don't. I'm not down with most bras. Speaking
I
of
feel
bras
you on that
specifically,
one.
but yeah, so yeah, there are definitely things that like yes, I definitely realize the challenges that come with finding not just regular clothes, but like spicy clothes, lingerie and stuff that is like comfortable and fairly easy to get on, whether it's you doing it yourself or like if you need like assistance like I do. Yeah, I want to be comfortable even if it's for content stuff. Like I'm not trying to tire myself out just by trying to get the outfit on.
Mhm,
So yeah, those are like things that I suggest to girls sometimes when they ask me, like things like bralettes, little baby dolls, little like cami dresses type situations, just like stuff like that that can be comfy and cute at the same time.
mhm.
But yeah, and you're definitely right. Like accessibility of clothing can sometimes be an issue or like a barrier to that for sure, especially in the world of like lingerie or spicier clothes.
So this wasn't on the list that I gave you,
That's
but
okay.
is it ever discouraging when something is too difficult to put on, or that you may need help from someone else to put it on for you?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely things that I have in my closet now that, um, for one, maybe are a little bit more difficult to put on, and because I do need help with putting clothes on, that it's almost like a feeling of guilt. Like if something's not super easy, I feel like it's making more work for another person. And so
Mhm,
I guess that's part of my like I think internalized ableism sometimes is that you don't want to be a burden, so you want to try to make
mhm,
everything as easy as possible for everybody around you. So it's definitely that can be discouraging sometimes if it's like something that ends up requiring a little bit more effort or something. But also I have things where, like because of the proportions of my body, or like because I have a little bit of scoliosis, or you know what I mean, like stuff like that. Like I'm not like a
mhm,
perfectly symmetrical human being
mhm,
that, like you compare. So like you look in the mirror and you're like, oh, like that doesn't look exactly like how I thought it was gonna look. Or, I feel like this would look better on like somebody else that was maybe a little bit taller in the abdomen and like, stuff like that.
mhm.
Um, I mean, yes, like I feel like anybody else, I'll put something on and I'm just kind of like, it's not what I thought it was gonna be. Um,
I
and I
can
think,
relate to that in like
yeah,
a large scale, and I think honestly though, like people who are not even disabled, they experience that as well, especially
right.
women.
Right. I
Like,
mean, I feel like in this capitalist world that
yes.
we live in, capitalist and also misogynistic, that yes, I feel like every woman, I mean, everybody, but like women in particular are kind of like the target for a lot of like, um, like your body should be this way, so you should buy this product. If your body doesn't look like this in this dress, then you need to do something about it. And I just feel like there's always something to be unhappy about being a
Yeah.
woman, and like, being expected to like look a certain way. But then with like this idea of intersectionality, I feel like when you add on top of that you are also disabled, so like you're adding like more differences from the ideal beauty standard, so to say, that can create like extra layers of insecurity or like extra points of like feeling uncomfortable with how your body looks and stuff like that. So yes, I definitely think it's something that like everybody and especially every woman really struggles with. And then I think the disability just kind of adds like an extra. layer onto that maybe makes it a little bit more intense, I would say, for disabled women.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that I agree with as well. And I think a lot of us in the disability community can resonate with. On that note,
Hmm.
my last question is, what advice would you give someone struggling with confidence as a disabled person in a society that believes we don't deserve to feel good about ourselves?
Yeah. I feel like there's no like one formula to this or like one thing that, is like a magic wand or something. But I do feel like if you can kind of, I mean, I hate to use a word, but like force yourself really to like put yourself out there. And I know that especially at, depending on one's disability and their, circumstances, environmental situations, that there are like barriers just in terms of like maybe getting outside and being able to like go out in public to go out on a date and meet somebody. But I feel like, if at all possible, in whatever way that you can, right, the like putting yourself out there and just, constantly reminding yourself of all the good things that you have to offer can kind of be a starting point. I guess it's kind of like a form of exposure therapy, so to say.
Hmm.
Um, and, I think that something I've learned through my experiences so far is that, yes, like, um, for me as well, like, that there are, I'm sure, men that, for example, see my dating profile and see the wheelchair and automatically swipe no, just based off of the wheelchair or that they see that I have a disability, right? And it's just like being realistic that yes, there's going to be people like that that are going to automatically discount you for like very shallow reasons, right? Um, but that there's also a whole world of people that are able to, look past, whatever visible disability you might have. What for me, it's like the wheelchair primarily and are going to want to get to know you, right? And get to know you as a person and like that it won't be like such a big deal to the people that are like meant for you. So I suppose it's a little bit cheesy, but I think it's true that, there's always people that are meant for you. And but you're not going to find those people if you just don't put yourself out there. So
Hmm.
something I try to remind myself is to just sometimes, even me, sometimes I don't want to go on that first date with somebody because I have a lot of insecurities or I'm nervous or whatever. But I'm like, you know what? Just do it. Just do it.
Hmm.
Because you never know. You never know who's
Hmm.
going to be like the person for you or like if it's going to be somebody that, I mean, even if it's not a forever connection, most connections are not forever, that it can still be a positive experience, however it turns out. But I think that, sometimes it takes a little bit of like initial courage, right? Like you're still nervous and kind of afraid, but if you just can do it, that you will, statistically speaking, you're going to end up with some positive experiences. At least that's been my experience. So I feel like that's something that has kind of helped me. But yeah, so I guess like the general advice is like just trying to do your best to get over the initial hurdle if you can just like start to put yourself out there in whatever way that you can, just to open yourself up to experiences so you're not missing out. Which is like I think one of my big personal motivators for why like I started dating initially is that I just didn't want to keep missing out on some potential positive experiences with people.
Yeah, exactly. That is a really valid point where I think it's better to regret a date or like a person, um, rather than regretting never having experienced it.
Right. No, 100%. Yeah, like but yeah, in my time that I've been dating, have I had a few bad dates? Yeah, there were just some people where I was like, dang, that was kind of a waste of time because we just did not have chemistry, didn't connect. But I feel like every date that I've gone on, again, it's just like getting the experience. You become a little bit more confident. It becomes a little less nerve-wracking the
Mhm.
more you put yourself out there.
It's
Um,
almost like a job interview. The
I
more you
mean,
do,
it is,
the
yeah.
easier it gets.
Yeah, and I mean, everything is a skill in life. I feel like even with things like how you present yourself on a date, conversation skills, skills about, making sure that people like know that you're interested and, like giving proper cues, like, stuff like that. I feel like all of it is our skills and all of it is also you have to practice to gain skill or get better at, certain skills. So, yeah, the more you can do it, the more you can put yourself out there, I feel like you have a higher chance of getting some of those positive experiences. But I mean, even my negative experiences, I mean, I feel the same that I haven't actually like truly regretted anything that I've done or anybody that I've met, even if it wasn't like a necessarily a super positive experience with those individuals. But everything is like a learning experience as well.
Mhm.
So however it turns out, you know, it can end up being positive in that way. Um, and honestly, too, I think that part of dating and honestly a lot of stuff in life is that it may not turn out positive. but like having the confidence in yourself to know that even if there's some things that end up negative about your experience, that, you will be fine. You'll be
Yeah.
fine. You'll work through it and you keep going. You try the next thing or the next person, whatever. Yeah, part of dating is, facing rejection and just being able to know that, even if this person rejects me, even if I have a negative experience, that, I'm confident in myself as a person, that even if it might suck for a few days, a few months, sometimes longer after a bad breakup, like
Yeah.
that you will be okay. And I feel like that's also a part of it as well, just kind of understanding that that's the game, but you'll be okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think like even though, of course, like with a disability, you're more likely to face rejection. It's something
Hmm.
that everybody does, and
Right,
it's like inevitable.
right.
How do you know what you want out of a relationship, or like just like maybe out of sex if you
Hmm.
don't get to experience the good and the bad?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, I think that something, I mean, since you just brought it up a little bit, I mean, something that I definitely had to work through as I kind of prepared to start dating is that know, uh, I feel like, able-bodied persons, they pretty much are given like a blueprint for how dating and intimacy, sex will work for them because you see it everywhere, right? You see it in movies and magazines and TV shows, and books. Like, I feel like most teenagers, young adults, right, are not wondering like, oh, like how will sex work for me? You know? And so I feel like that was like, whether I wanted to admit it or not at the time, that I feel like that was like a big point of like kind of fear or like concern for me, like before I actually became like sexually active and all that stuff. Is like, I feel like because society just, for one, I mean, within, my sort of media representation, again, like film, TV shows, magazines, whatever, that there is just not really a representation of disabled bodies, right? Especially in any sort of like romance arc or romance story, right? Um,
Mhm.
but so just like not having any examples to look at for that, for guidance or anything. So even though it's like is very much common sense that like my anatomy is not different,
Yeah.
it's really not that different from a regular person. I don't know why. Like once I did it, I was like, I don't know why I thought this was going to be such a big deal or like a big scary thing. And like it was normal. It was normal. And so I feel like
Yeah.
that's like one of the things that I had to like once once I did it, I was like, oh, why was I scared to like go after this before, and like and I think the thing that I've realized upon like, speaking with like partners I've had in the past and everything, I have been, at least for me, like I have been for all the people I've dated or had some sort of experience with, hooked up with, I've been like their first person that they've like been with that had a disability,
Mhm.
like a physical disability especially. And one of the like the feedback that I've gotten like almost every time that I've had a conversation with someone about it is like you're not different from like any other woman I've been with. Like it's so in that way it's like kind of boring. Like it's not anything exciting or special. Be like because I have a disability, it's just kind of the same. I think if anything that one thing I say a lot is that like with disabled persons that because we might have some bodily differences or like for example like maybe like a certain position is not possible or maybe a certain position is possible but like just having to like be careful so somebody doesn't get hurt or like stuff like that,
Mhm.
that because disabled people are a lot more likely to communicate about sex before it happens, or afterward or whenever really, that because we are more open to communication about like having sex with us, that oftentimes the sex is really good because a lot of times I feel like especially amongst like heterosexual sex that there's kind of like a few scripts that people go by and there's not really oftentimes a lot of communication like beforehand or during or after even,
Mhm.
um and I feel like that can sometimes like if you're not communicating like you're missing out on being able to make those sexual experiences like really great ones, so yeah, it's not like it's not like you have to have like an hour debrief after or something. But just kind of just communicating a little bit more before, during, or after. And I feel like that can really help to enhance like connection and just the experience overall, so it's pleasant for everybody, as much as possible. And yeah, like, I think one thing I've tried to uh, like tell to my disabled friends, especially if they haven't had a lot of those experiences yet or haven't had any of those experiences yet, that like again, you're gonna be fine. You're gonna do it, and it's a natural thing. it's gonna happen, and it's not gonna be like a big deal. It's like your body is really not that different. Like even with differences, your body's not that different.
Yeah,
That is going to
exactly.
create like such a big barrier that I feel like I made this big barrier in my mind. I'm like, oh my God, it's going to be so different. Like, they're not going to know what to do with me or like, that kind of thing. And it
Yeah,
just
and
makes
that's
no
why I
sense.
advocate for adequate sex ed that includes disability because
Hmm.
when we grow up in our adolescence being so confused about our own anatomy
Right.
and understanding how these things work, that is so like humiliating,
Right.
honestly.
Yeah. It's just like, like I said, I felt very silly once I like started having sexual experiences. Like I don't know what I thought it was gonna be like. I just feel like I just thought like my body was so different that it was gonna take like an instruction manual or like just somebody. Honestly, one thing that I really had to work through once I started dating is that because of like internalized ableism, I really felt like that the only way that somebody would want to be physically intimate with me is if they like fell in love with me or something. Like I felt like I would have to win somebody over in the like
Mhm,
mental, emotional capacity first, right? So a lot of like people pleasing, a lot of like not wanting to like push against or disagree, like wanting to be very
mhm,
palatable because I felt like, oh, the only way that somebody would be sexually interested in me is if they first like had an emotional connection to me and they could just see how great I was type of thing.
mhm,
And so honestly, I got my feelings hurt a few times because there were men that wanted to have sex with me that maybe didn't care all that much about me mentally, emotionally, right? But they found me physically attractive. So it was a little bit confusing for me because I felt like, oh, if they're, willing to like get over like my disability and have sex with me, that, oh, it must mean that they like have feelings for me. Like it must be that.
mhm.
So then I just had to realize like, dang, like they just wanted sex. And and like in a way that sucks, especially if you have feelings for them. But at the same time, it was like, oh, like on just a purely physical level, there are men that find me desirable and attractive. But I feel like that is also like the confusion that I had to kind of work through because it was a little bit there was like a disconnect there. I think because I didn't realize it until afterward, but I just like realizing that I really didn't have that sexual, physical like confidence in myself. To think that it was possible that like a guy would just be physically attracted to me off of just purely physical chemistry or attraction. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, the internalized ableism and like the negative kind of messaging from society definitely I feel like has like long-term effects. Um, and yeah, it's just again, these are a lot of things I just would not have figured out if I didn't just kind of start putting myself out there and start doing the thing. So I'm glad that I did because it enabled me to figure out
Yeah.
a lot of stuff. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of barriers, just not just I mean like physical barriers as far as like, transportation, like physically having to like get ready to get presentable to go on a date. Like I get there's all of that. But like so a lot of times I feel like what stops disabled people from kind of exploring their sexuality or, dating and things like that is first like the mental, emotional barrier, the like lack of confidence, or just, feeling like because there's no examples to be seen anywhere, like just not really understanding like how all of that will work for you or like work for them. Um, and so often I feel like the first barrier is like ourselves, just like mentally, emotionally, to get like past that and then sometimes there's like more logistical barriers and things like that as well, which sucks. But yeah, I just think that you just don't know until you start putting yourself out there. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Even if you're scared, if it's something that you really desire for yourself, you
right,
just have to go for it.
right, yeah, no, and I know it's like not easier. It's easier said than done.
Mhm,
I know that. I just hope that one of my hopes is that by seeing me, I mean, at least I can be like one example to show that like it is possible, right? And
mhm,
if I can do it, you can probably do it too. And just that understanding that it is a very personal journey, and it's not anything that happens overnight. But the more little by little that you can kind of get yourself to the point that you can take that kind of leap of courage to put yourself out there, I feel like the sooner the better. Um, and yeah, I'm just glad that I can kind of be a point of reference now, in terms of all of that. Um, yeah,
Yeah, so thank you so much for all that you do and continue to do. I am hopeful as well that in our lifetime we will see a significant change in all of this,
yeah.
really.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I think that
So,
the more we talk about these things, I feel like one of my main goals in a lot of my posts, especially like for the Instagram side of stuff, which is more public, obviously, um, that just like humanizing disabled people, because I feel like, it's not just desexualization. It's like quite frankly, a lot of able-bodied people don't see disabled people as like equal human beings, right?
mhm,
I feel like part of like the dehumanization is the desexualization,
mhm,
like not seeing disabled people as like fully autonomous like adults, right? And I feel like that
mhm,
like especially that idea of like an independent, autonomous disabled adult becomes very like confusing for some disabled people,
yeah,
especially when you start talking about dating and sex, because that is a realm where obviously we are very concerned with like people's, ability to consent and being an independent, autonomous adult. And so when you start bringing sex into the equation, I feel like their minds just kind
yeah,
of explode a little bit.
yeah. Yeah, so is there anything that you would like to say, like, in addition to what we talked about?
Well, I just want to say thank you for having me, and I also
Mm,
appreciate the work that you're doing. And I think that as you mentioned, that sexual education is really important, and disability should be a part of that, or just including disabled bodies into that discussion. I know that definitely like growing up thinking about like my sex ed through like middle high school and just life that
mhm,
yeah, I think honestly like especially from like medical professionals, I felt often that anytime like an issue about sexual health came up, that it was almost just like they felt like the messaging that I received, the vibe I would get from a lot of
mhm,
doctors is like they didn't understand why it was necessary. Um, like for example, and I'll just give like one example of this, why I think it's really important. I was doing a procedure in which beforehand, if you are like a woman of childbearing age, that they automatically are supposed to give you a pregnancy test beforehand, just to make sure you're not pregnant before the procedure. And I was, with the nurse, I was waiting to like, do whatever we needed to do to prep for the procedure. And she already had kind of like was being a little weird or maybe made some weird comments. And then it got to the part where I knew that normally this is where they ask you, because I'd done it many times before, about like, is there any chance that you could be pregnant? Should we give you a pregnancy test, or do you want to sign like a waiver stating that you know you're not pregnant, stuff like that. And I know that this is this point in the process, and this person, this nurse, looks to another nurse and she said, "Oh, like we don't need to do this, right?"
wow.
Yeah, I mean, and this is like a very common occurrence. Just like there's just
Yeah,
one example I can think of because it happened
yep.
somewhat recently.
Mm.
And so before the other nurse, well, first of all, I was very happy that that nurse was like, "Yes, obviously." Like that was kind of that nurse's response. But like that nurse and me at the same time, I was kind of like, "Yes." And I just looked at her and I literally was like, "Why would you think that I wouldn't need to, answer this part of the process?" Or like, why? Like, why? You know what I'm saying? And she was just like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Like, I just didn't know." But I mean, just that one example just shows like how even within like the medical profession, medical professionals,
Yeah,
that like clearly just by her saying that, like, oh, like we don't need to do this, right? She clearly did not see me as like a sexual being, a sexual adult.
mhm,
I mean, again, it's like the subtext, right? But it's just like clearly, I mean, either she didn't think I had the like physical capacity to have sex, or even if I did have the physical capacity, she just assumed that I wasn't having sex. I don't know what it was, but obviously
mhm,
she was not seeing me as like a regular woman. If I was like an able-bodied woman, late 20s, early 30s, right, there would be no doubt of like I should ask this
yeah,
person about their pregnancy status.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah, so just stuff like that. There's obviously like a lot of work to be done. And I think that in just like humanizing disabled people is something that I really try to do, like by talking about dating and sex through my platforms, is that it can just like help to like prevent like mistreatment, first of all, in some cases, but to prevent like the spread of misinformation, disinformation, and just so that way to generally like make disabled people's lives better because we're not seen as like subhuman, basically, or not
Mhm,
infantilized, essentially. But
yeah.
um, yeah, so sorry, I guess I'll end on that example as like one reason why I think it's important that I do this, that you also do your work. That yeah, I honestly consider what I do a form of like sexual and disability education and also like advocacy in a way, right?
Mhm,
I think that we're both doing that same kind of work in a little bit different way.
Yeah,
But yeah,
advocacy comes in many forms.
right,
It may not be seen that way by some, but you being able to show your confidence and show that you are desirable and that you are a sexual being, that is like doing what you're like what needs to be done.
right, right. But yeah, I really appreciate that you had me on today.
Thank you
And
so much for
yeah, and
this.
I know that we'll be in touch.
Yes.
Yes.